G'day everybody, welcome back to Stevie J Raw, and of course, today we're going to be talking about the suspicious connections between Amber Heard and the judge and many others. So that is what we're going to be talking about today, and I will get into that very shortly. But first of all, I just wanted to say a couple of things. I will preface all of this by saying that I am by no means a lawyer. I am by no means someone with any kind of professional understanding of the legal system in the UK. However, I am someone who's able to research things and have a look at a few things and try to find out what's going on with these connections. So, I also want to preface this by saying that I am by no means saying that I know categorically that there is something underhanded going on here, or that anybody is guilty of any kind of bribery or anything like that. However, what I will say is that these connections are extremely suspicious given the outcome that happened in this case. So, with that said, I do honestly believe, in my opinion, that all of these connections that we're about to see today influence the outcome of this trial. Bear with me while I get through this, because there is quite a web of connections to get through here. So I have done my best. I don't say that I have found everything, but I have found a fair bit, and I will give full credit to all of those who have found the information and posted on Twitter or another format where I have found it. So, bear with me. We will go through this right now. So, we know that there's been, some talk of dodgy connections and things like that, and I want to really outline this and say it really is a web. It's not like a straight down, a vertical flow chart of how these connections are made. It is a circular web of connections here. That's the best way that I can describe what I've seen so far. So, let's get into that now, and let's take a look. So, where's the best place to start here? Now, you saw the thumbnail probably, and I've got 4 main people on there, but there's a whole lot of other players in this as well, which we will get into. So, please bear with me. But let's start with Justice Andrew Nicol, the judge in the UK trial who handed down the most biased and ridiculous verdict I think I've probably ever seen. So, it's talking about, him here, great, this is all the things that he does. But there's a few key things to point out here. So, one of them here is Jeffrey Robertson. So, remember that name, Jeffrey Robertson. And he co-wrote Media Law with Justice Andrew Nicol. Okay, so that's key to remember. All right, moving on. So, controversial cases. This is relevant as well. So let's take a look at this while we are here. Justice Nicol was involved was the judge in the trial of consultant surgeon David Sellew in November 2013. Sellew was found guilty of gross negligence manslaughter following the death of a patient under his care. He served 15 months in prison of a 30-month sentence. After release, Sellew's appeal against the conviction was successful in 2016. The grounds for success were that Justice Nicol had failed to instruct the jury properly with regard to the meaning of the charge. The jury had returned to court before reaching their verdict seeking further guidance, which was not forthcoming from Justice Nicol. Okay, so he was meant to instruct the jury and give them further guidance. They actually asked for further guidance, and he didn't give it to them. And he convicted this person who did 15 months in prison when he was innocent, and he had the conviction overturned. So that's very interesting in all of this, because, Johnny could get his conviction overturned as well. Sorry, not his conviction, have this verdict overturned as well. All right, so what else do we need to know about here? It doesn't actually offer very much on this page. But if you take a look at, and we go a little bit further with this. So let's just follow the train of Justice Nicol for a moment. Let's just follow it for a moment. And let's see who he's married to. Okay, he's married to Camilla Palmer QC and has 2 sons. Okay, that doesn't seem like it's too out of the ordinary. So here we go. Let's go. Camilla Palmer. Okay, Camilla Palmer's a solicitor. Yep, looking at employment law. And, oh, look at that. Okay, so she's into Women's Equality Network. Interesting, but not the most interesting thing. So, we look at this. Okay, that's who he's married to, Camilla Palmer. Great, no problem. She's married to Andrew Nicol. There we go, we just saw that. High Court judge, and they have 2 sons, Jamie and Robert. So, very interesting. Yes, Jamie and Robert. So, if we just do a quick search over here for Robert, Let's just do that. We'll do that together. Let's see. Robert Palmer, talk radio. Let's just do that. Oh, there he is. Robert Palmer, talk radio. Oh, wow. Oh, there you go. Talk radio. So he's on talk radio, and that is the son of Justice Nicol. So let's remember that. He's the son of Justice Nicol and Camilla Palmer, or Camille Palmer. So there you go. Robert Palmer, the son of Justice Nicol. Now, you might say, well, what's the big deal there? No big deal. I'm not seeing the connection yet. And that's fair enough. That's fair enough. So let's have a look over at Talk Radio. Let's have a look at their details. So Talk Radio. Okay, cool. We've got Talk Radio here. Yep, nothing too drastic there. But let's have a look at who their notable presenters are. Oh, look at that. Dan Wootton. We know that name, don't we? Dan Wootton is, obviously a presenter, a notable presenter, they say here, on Talk Radio in the UK. So, the judge's son works with Dan Wootton. Interesting. So, there's the first connection we have to the case, is Dan Wootton and the son of the judge, Robert Palmer. They work together, right here, at Talk Radio in the UK. That's interesting in itself. So, that is a very interesting point in itself. But let's go just a little further. And let's take a look at, let's just take a look at the owner, right? Talk Radio. Okay, Wireless Group. Well, that doesn't seem like it's a big deal. Wireless Group, no problem. Let's check them out. So Wireless Group. Okay, cool. Yep, they are, oh, wait a minute. Later purchased by News Corp. And who owns News Corp? Rupert Murdoch. Of course he does. Rupert Murdoch owns this business, this company, Wireless, who owns Talk Radio. And of course we know that Dan Wootton wrote that article for The Sun, which Murdoch owns. But Rupert Murdoch also owns Talk Radio, where Dan Wootton is a notable presenter, as we just heard. And also, he works with the judge's son, Robert Palmer. So there you go. There's the first major connection that I see between all of these players, which is right from the judge all the way down, and this is why I said it's a web, because the connection doesn't go straight across from Judge Nicol to Rupert Murdoch, but it goes down through his son, through his wife, through his son, and back to Dan Wootton, who is working for Rupert Murdoch at Talk Radio in the UK. So that is the first connection there. And isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that a judge in such an important trial, and look, in any trial, has this kind of a connection to one of the defendants in Dan Wootton, and also to Rupert Murdoch. So if you want to sit there and tell me that there's no influence from Rupert Murdoch, well, you could do that. And you feel free to do that. But I'm going to go with my suspicion here, with my gut feel, and that is that someone like Rupert Murdoch has influence everywhere and doesn't just let things and leave things to chance. So you let me know what you guys think, and I will get to you in the comments very soon. So that's the first connection. Now, I said that this is a web. This is a web of connections here. And so now I'm going to go and have a look at some of the information that's come out about the other parties in this, and how there's another connection to Amber Heard herself. So, if you don't know who Grief is on Twitter, and has absolutely been supplying some fantastic information from a legal standpoint, and really, really interesting. So give Grief a follow on Twitter if you don't already. So Grief says here, okay, this is potentially problematic. The issue with establishing conflict of interest is while judges come under oath for integrity, the actual rules are seemingly vague. This isn't to protect them, it's to catch the circumstances of each case in itself. This is insufficient. Right, so, in this tweet here from Fem, another great person to follow on Twitter as well, the connections that I just went through are outlined here in sort of a more of a summary kind of level, so you can see all those connections there. But let's take a look at the next step. Let's take a look at the next part of this web of dodgy background connections between all of these people and more. So, let's take a look at this one. So number one, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this already, but let's recap. Let's go over it again. So, number one, Nickel, the judge, wrote a book with Jeffrey Robertson. Remember I mentioned Jeffrey Robertson before, who is on the Wikipedia page of Justice Nickel. So Jeffrey Robertson wrote a book with Justice Nickel and was employed by his firm Doughty Street when appointed. Okay, so there you go. They were employed together. Jeffrey Robertson is Jen Robinson, Amber Heard's counsel, mentor and employer. So Jeffrey Robertson is Jen Robinson's boss. And who's Jen Robinson? Counsel for Amber Heard. Wow, there's a connection straight away. Number 3, Jen Robinson brought Amber Heard to a private dinner during trial. Attendees were Baroness Helena Kennedy, hostess Kathy Lett. Kennedy was also with Doughty. Kathy Lett is Jeffrey's ex-wife, personal friend of Jen, and mutuals Camilla Palmer, Nickel's wife. Oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that just very interesting? So we've got such a web here, and I said this is a web. So Nickel and Jeffrey Robinson wrote a book together. Jeffrey Robinson is the mentor of Jen Robinson, who is Amber Heard's legal counsel. Jen Robinson brought Amber Heard to a private dinner during the trial with Helena Kennedy and Kathy Lett. Kennedy used to work at Doughty Street, and Kathy Lett is Jeffrey's ex-wife and personal friend of Jen. So all of these people are interlinked, and they're having dinner together. Isn't that just lovely? What a lovely dinner to sit there and talk about how they can screw over Johnny Depp. Oh, all right. Then it just goes on here for number 5 and says multiple news reports place this team of women working with and supporting Amber for years, from UN functions to published support during the trial. So, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Now, I have to give a shout out here as well to Paris Cara as well, because I think she started writing down what everybody was thinking. So massive shout out to Paris Cara, and she started trying to join it all together, join all the dots here. And so this is a crude diagram, but it kind of displays this web fairly well. So you've got over here Baroness Helena Kennedy. She sits there. Doughty Street Chambers, where these people all worked and were connected. Then you got Judge Nickel, Camilla Palmer, wife, son, Robert Palmer, right here. Works at Talk Radio. Works with Dan Wooten. And the only part that's missing here is, whose name is it? Whose name is missing right here? Who owns Talk Radio? That's right, Rupert Murdoch. His name is missing from here. Rupert Murdoch. So she's done a pretty good job here in pen. So again, big shout out to Paris Cara. So then it goes across, of course, to Kathy Lett, Jeffrey Robertson. That's right, and all connected here. And Jeffrey Robertson wrote the book with Justice Nickel. And there's a lot of arrows here, but you can see Jen Robinson, counsel for Amber Heard. Amber Heard is right here, and private dinner party. And look at that. All these people were attending that private party, and no doubt giving advice, giving potential information to Amber Heard. Okay, so just to recap where we are right now. So let's follow this down. And Paris Cara, thank you again for this, because this is actually kind of making it easier to explain. So we have Judge Nickel right here, and then his son works, which is Robert Palmer, works at Talk Radio in the UK, which is the same place that Dan Wooten currently works. And yes, he's a scumbag, we know that. But the part that's missing here is the name of Rupert Murdoch, who owns Talk Radio in the UK. He owns where Dan Wooten works. He owns where Robert Palmer, the son of the judge, works. So you look at just how close all these connections are. Rupert Murdoch is literally 2 steps away by connection to Andrew Nickel, to the judge. So if you're going to try and tell me there's no conflict of interest here, Dan Wooten was a defendant in the UK case. It was Johnny Depp versus NGN and Dan Wooten. So there's a direct connection right there. Camilla Palmer, so Andrew Nickel's wife, is friends with Kathy Lett. How amazing. And Jeffrey Robertson over here, who was good friends with Andrew Nickel, and they wrote a book together and worked together. Amazing. And Jeffrey Robertson is the mentor of Jen Robinson, who is Amber Heard's legal counsel. So, I mean, can anybody deny this? Seriously, if there's anybody out there who denies these connections, who denies that there could be any wrongdoing here, please hit me up on my website, hit me up on DMs, hit me up on anything, and I would absolutely love to have you come on to my channel and respectfully debate why this is irrelevant and why Amber Heard is innocent. Please contact me. I would love to speak to you if you are one of those people. This is just a couple of hours ago from Grief, and again, like I said, follow Grief on Twitter. Very informative, and also Laura B as well. So Grief says here, so that's 3 separate actions in foreign jurisdictions that Nicol has now interfered with, and with no authority to even English law. Pretty obvious now he'd made up his mind before day 1 of the trial. Absolutely appalling. Judicial corruption at its most malignant. So, that's a really big statement. That's a really big statement there. And let's take a look at what he's actually talking about there. So let me go into this one here. All right. So let's see. Laura B says Johnny was not allowed to submit any confidential evidence from Virginia that would impeach Amber without sanctions and potentially his VA case being dismissed. Nichols was overreaching and interfered with Johnny's case in the USA. Not only allowed AH in the courtroom, but also her sister. So there's all of that as well. So that's what I was talking about the previous things. So not just the verdict, but at the beginning of the trial, there was all of these things that advantaged Amber Heard and were to the detriment of Johnny Depp. So very interesting. Now let's take even more of a look at that, right? So again, from Grief, and massive shout out to Grief, but it says here, so that's why Robinson was there. Heard would listen and then feed back information to NGN relied on. None of it submitted to pre-trial adjudication or response. Fuck me. The only thing I can conclude is Sherborne allowed this because, like the rest of us, he assumed it was a slam dunk, talking about the case. Alright, and Laura B says here, she quotes the judge. Okay, it says, this is what the judge said. This was an article talking about the judge's earlier on decisions in the case. So early decisions in the case. While the judge acknowledged that Heard was not a party, he said defendants NGN and Wooten rely heavily on the information which Miss Heard can provide. Heard will not be in a position to give instructions to NGN's lawyers, but she can provide information on which the defendants may choose to act, he said. There is a benefit to the defendants in her being able to do that near instantaneously in the course of Mr. Depp's cross-examination, and, in my view, it would be unfair to the defendants to deprive them of that advantage. So he's literally saying, yes, it would be an advantage for NGN and Dan Wooten if Amber Heard could sit in the courtroom and tell them what's being said in Johnny Depp's cross-examination. Utterly ridiculous. Okay, it goes on to say the rejection is the latest development in a long-running pre-trial conflict between the legal teams. Right. And so not only was it the verdict that was biased, it was the decisions made earlier on about all of this stuff before the trial even started. All right. And then to go on as well, Johnny Depp has failed to stop his ex-wife Amber Heard from watching him give evidence in a libel case over allegations of domestic abuse. So exactly. He tried and failed. And now what Grief set up here is so true. David Sherborne, like the rest of us, assumed it was a slam dunk case and it wasn't necessarily going to be a big deal. However, when we see all of the connections that we see right here, it is a very big deal and very important because, let's see again, Justice Nicol, son Robert Palmer, Talk Radio, Dan Wooten, and of course Rupert Murdoch's ugly head would be right down here, in charge of all of this part here. And then, of course, Jeffrey Robinson, who worked with Andrew Nicol at Doughty Street. Jen Robinson, who worked with Justice Nicol at Doughty Street. Whew. And of course, Jen Robinson is the counsel for Amber Heard. So, they basically said, what that said in that article was, Jen Robinson was the counsel for Amber Heard, and Amber Heard was allowed to sit in court while Johnny Depp was being cross-examined and give information straight to NGN and Dan Wooten. That's basically what the judge just said in that article, that excerpt that we read from the beginning of the trial. So it is not just the verdict that is completely corrupt and biased. It is not just the end of the trial and that disgusting piece of garbage that we saw of a verdict. It is the beginning as well. Right from the beginning, the judge was in favor of Amber Heard and influencing all of this. Now, that is another point that leads me to believe that all of those connections, all these connections we see right here, influenced the trial from day one, and that the judge absolutely had his mind made up before he actually handed out the verdict. Unfreaking believable. How could Johnny ever get justice? How could he ever get a fair trial with all of this garbage going on in the background? Now, another interesting point that I want to bring up is, and it's really a question to you guys. Did Adam Woolman, did David Sherborne, did any of Johnny's legal team already have an understanding of all of these connections? Did they already know about all of this? Because I'm really curious about that question, and if so, why they didn't raise it earlier. So if anybody is a legal eagle out there, please let me know what you think and why, if they did know about it, they didn't mention anything. Because maybe they're playing a long chess game here, and they did know something about it, and they knew that the case would go this way, and that they would get it under appeal. They would win under appeal and not only disgrace the judge, but they would also be able to expose NGN, Dan Wooten, Rupert Murdoch for all of their corruption and lies. Because if it's found in the appeal through discovery and evidence that's submitted to court in order to find if there was any wrongdoing, well, that would be very, very interesting and extremely, extremely positive for Johnny Depp, wouldn't it? Not only could they take down, they could actually take down NGN, News Corp, Rupert Murdoch, Dan Wooten. They could take all of them down, but vindicate Johnny in the process. So I am going to be watching this appeal like a hawk. I'm going to be watching it very, very closely, because if Johnny's legal team were playing the long game, well, I think that is, I think that's super clever, and I think that would just be the most epic victory in the appeal if that happens. So, let me know what you guys think. It's just a theory, but let's see what happens.